The mind can feel like a city after midnight, lights still burning in every window, doors left open, footsteps echoing down long corridors, 1,000 whispers tugging at you when all you want is rest. You try to lower the noise, yet a single memory flares. You tell yourself to focus, yet your attention splinters like glass. You push, and the pushing becomes another kind of fatigue. If this is where you are, ruminating at the edge of sleep, powering through the day on crumbs of focus, promising yourself tomorrow will be different, know that I see you. Know that your struggle is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that your inner kingdom is asking for a wiser kind of leadership. There is a particular ache that comes from broken agreements with ourselves. You set a clear plan in the morning and watch it blur by noon. You swear off the distraction and find your thumb searching for it. You vow to stay calm and then snap at someone you love. The body registers these small betrayals. The jaw tightens, the chest draws tight, the breath grows shallow. Then shame slides in, quiet and efficient, telling you this is simply who you are. That voice is not truth, it is habit. Habits are not moral verdicts. They are patterns of attention, emotion, and energy that have learned to loop. Patterns can be unlearned when someone steps onto the throne and governs with clarity. Ancient wisdom speaks to this with startling simplicity. Solomon, renowned for discernment, did not begin with might. He began with guardship. Guard the inner wellspring, he taught, because from it flow the courses of your life. This is not a mystical riddle. It is a blueprint for governance. Guarding is not a panicked vigilance. It is a calm, ordered attention that decides what enters and what is allowed to remain. In modern terms, it means directing your focus deliberately, setting rhythms that steady your mood, and making judgments that are measured rather than impulsive. Wisdom before willpower, order before effort, counsel before action. There is also a map in your body. Neuroscience gives language to what sages intuited. The prefrontal cortex, your planning, choosing, meaning-making center, quietly coordinates when it is given oxygen, time, and uncluttered attention. The amygdala, your alarm bell, sounds loudly with perceived threat, even if the threat is an unanswered email or a memory that still stings. Dopamine rewards novelty and immediacy, and if left ungoverned, it will train you to chase tiny sparks instead of sustaining a steady flame. This is not bad news. It is hopeful news because it means you are not defective. You are wired, and wiring can be trained. Breath lengthens the space between signal and reaction. Focus strengthens with practice like a muscle. Counsel introduces new perspectives that expand the brain's options. As you hear these words, allow the body to soften. Let the shoulders fall a fraction of an inch. Place both feet flat, feel their weight, and unhook the tongue from the roof of the mouth. Take one slow inhale and double the length of the exhale, as if you are blowing out a candle no one else can see. The nervous system registers safety when exhalation lingers. Safety lowers the sirens. Lowered sirens make room for judgment. Governance begins, not with a shout, but with a quieter room. In that quieter room, you can choose what matters. In that quieter room, you can choose again when you drift. Choosing again is not failure. It is the very act of rule. Consider the difference between pushing and ruling. Pushing is frantic. You brace, you clench, you demand immediate results. Ruling is steady. You set a law, you keep a rhythm, you apply a judgment, and you return to it tomorrow. Pushing exhausts the will and makes the amygdala louder. Ruling preserves energy and makes the prefrontal voice audible. Pushing tries to conquer, ruling cultivates. Pushing treats you like a problem. Ruling treats you like a person with a purpose who deserves a well-ordered life. The muscles of will are useful. The laws of wisdom tell them where to go. Notice how your attention behaves when it isn't told the truth. It scatters. It looks for the brightest thing. It spends itself on whatever is easiest, but attention is loyal when honored. When you draw a clear circle around what matters and you protect that circle, attention blooms. When you set boundaries not as punishment but as protection, energy returns. When you stop asking yourself to do 10 things at once and instead ask one thing to be done well, dignity returns. You deserve that dignity. Your work deserves that dignity. The people in your life deserve the version of you who has chosen to govern rather than react. There is no accusation here, only a quiet exposure of what steals from you. There is no panic here, only a gentle alarm that says you have been living at the mercy of habits that do not know your name. Identity is not built in a day, it is built by a daily way. The way becomes you, step by step, breath by breath, decision by decision. The mind learns what you rehearse. The heart follows what you honor. The body trusts what you repeat. When the same truth is told gently and often, the nervous system leans toward it. The brain wires around it, and the soul begins to feel at home within it. If the word impossible has been standing in your doorway, let us rename it for what it usually is: ungoverned complexity. 1,000 small, unmanaged pieces look like one great wall. Bring them inside the gate. Lay them out on the table of judgment. Ask what serves your purpose and what drains it. Decide what will be allowed in this season and what will wait outside. The wall begins to open, not with a battering ram of motivation, but with the key of order. The key turns, not because you are finally good enough, but because rule has replaced chaos. This is the turn your life has been asking for, not a dramatic burst of effort that burns out by Friday, but a sober, compassionate rule that can be lived on ordinary days. The nights will still come. The whispers will still try, but a ruler who listens to wisdom rises before the noise does. A ruler who knows their counsel does not walk alone. A ruler who honors foundation does not boast too soon. A ruler who guards their walls sleeps without fear. Imagine that kind of rest in your bones. Imagine that kind of focus in your hands. Imagine that kind of steadiness in your voice when you speak to yourself at the start of a day. Let the city within you begin to settle. Let the streets clear. Let the gates close softly. Feel the air grow still. In that stillness, listen for the part of you that has always known you were meant to lead your inner life with kindness and with strength. That part is still here. That part is ready. And when it steps forward, not as a tyrant but as a wise governor, the impossible begins to negotiate. The impossible begins to move. The impossible begins to bow. Perhaps you have been living with a quiet exhaustion that doesn't make headlines, but drains the color from your days. The alarm goes off and your body rises, yet a part of you stays in bed, heavy with the weight of unfinished intentions. You keep your promises to everyone else and watch the promise to yourself fade by mid-afternoon. Somewhere between emails, errands, and the friendly smile you wear to keep the peace, you sense a thin ache. This is not how a life should be steered. The ache is not a flaw. It is intelligence. It is your inner compass insisting that the way you are managing attention, emotion, and time does not match the person you are becoming. There is a pattern that repeats in many quiet lives. A bright plan glows in the morning, then the day tilts and the plan slides. You reach for the easier thing because the harder thing feels like a wall. You tell yourself you will catch up later, and later becomes a hallway of mirrors where you do not quite meet your own eyes. The nervous system keeps score of these near misses, a tight jaw that will not unclench, a breath that never reaches the belly, a mind that hums even in silence. Shame tries to translate the signals into identity, whispering, "This is just who you are." That translation is false. What you are feeling is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of hunger, for order, for focus, for self-respect that can be felt in the spine. Beneath the noise, there is a longing for simple steadiness, not fireworks, not a heroic sprint, just the relief of doing what matters without the constant drag of self-doubt. The relief of finishing a task and feeling it land, clean and complete. The relief of going to bed without bargaining with tomorrow. This longing is honorable. It is the soul searching for structure the way a vine searches for a trellis. It is the intellect asking for a rhythm it can trust. It is the body asking for breaths that signal safety so the mind can think clearly again. When that support is present, attention steadies, judgment strengthens, and dignity returns to ordinary hours. Ancient wisdom honors that longing. Solomon did not celebrate chaotic brilliance, he honored governed brilliance. He taught that life flows from the inner wellspring and that the well is worth guarding. He praised straight vision, weighed counsel, patient construction, and walls that keep the good within. None of this sounds like hype because it is not hype. It is the architecture of a life that works. When wisdom sits in the center, willpower stops flailing and begins to serve. When counsel is welcomed, certainty softens into clarity. When foundations are laid before decorations, the house stands in every weather. When boundaries are restored, peace is not an accident, but a practice that holds. There is also a language for this in the brain and body. The prefrontal cortex lights up when it is given breath, time, and a clear target. The amygdala quiets when it trusts that you are not in danger, only in demand. Dopamine stops chasing sparks and starts rewarding progress when progress is made visible and repeated. None of this requires perfection. It asks only for coherence. The same small truths returning often enough that the nervous system learns to lean on them. Coherence feels like a softened chest, a longer exhale, a focus that can survive a notification. A voice in your head that speaks as a steady friend rather than a tired judge. If there is a place inside you that fears, this will be another promise that fades. That fear makes sense. Many promises have been made to you by late-night motivation and early morning urgency, and many of them dissolved by noon. What stands apart here is the source. We are not stacking more pressure on the will. We are placing wisdom at the center and letting the will take its rightful place. Strong, yes, but guided. We are not demanding a personality transplant. We are building a way of being that does not depend on perfect moods. The promise is modest and powerful at once. Govern gently, return consistently, and the impossible begins to organize itself into steps that can be taken. You are not late to your life. You are not disqualified by yesterday's loops. You are exactly on time to learn a calmer strength. The fatigue you feel is not a verdict. It is a message. The scattered focus is not a character flaw. It is a signal that attention has been left unled. The stress that rides your shoulders is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you have been carrying more than one person's work. Your work and the work of unmade decisions. When decisions are made with wisdom, half the weight slips away. When focus is honored, the remaining weight becomes meaningful, even satisfying. There is a steadier future that fits you. It looks like clear mornings where your mind knows whom it serves. It looks like afternoons with one task that matters and the courage to let the smaller tasks wait their turn. It looks like evenings where boundaries protect the quiet you once thought you had to earn. It looks like sleep that arrives because the city within has closed its gates and trusted the watch. This is not fantasy. It is the natural result of aligning desire with order, of letting spiritual insight and emotional neuroscience shake hands, of treating your life not as a problem to be fixed, but as a kingdom to be wisely governed. If you recognize yourself in these words, know this recognition is already progress. Awareness is a soft light that turns chaos into contours. With contours, a path appears. With a path, the heart begins to unclench. With an unclenched heart, wisdom can be heard. And when wisdom is heard, the mind stops fighting itself and starts building, stone by steady stone, the kind of life that does not collapse under ordinary storms. The beginning of true strength often arrives in a quieter form than expected, not as a charge into battle, but as a request for wisdom before anything else. The old story tells of a young ruler offered a wish and choosing discernment over riches, spectacle, and revenge. That choice sets the tone. Governance first, power second. It is a pattern that survives the centuries because it fits how a human life actually works. When the inner court is ruled by understanding, effort becomes precise. When understanding is absent, even heroic effort frays into exhaustion. Solomon's language for the inner life is spare and direct. Guard the wellspring, because every current of life rises from it. Look straight ahead, because scattered vision creates scattered paths. Seek counsel, because solitary certainty narrows judgment. Prepare the field before building the house, because foundations carry weight the walls cannot. keep the city walls intact, because even a beautiful city collapses when left exposed. These images are not ornaments. They are architecture. They sketch a sequence, source, sightline, shared wisdom, steady construction, and protective boundaries. Sequence matters. Without sequence, willpower chases emergencies and calls the chase virtue. With sequence, willpower serves wisdom and calls the service peace. The body seems to know this language already. When a person moves with discernment, the chest loosens, the breath deepens, and thoughts line up like footprints rather than whirl like leaves in wind. Emotional storms still pass through, but they meet a coastline rather than open sea. Neuroscience translates the poetry into mechanism. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of planning, weighing, and meaning, comes online under conditions of calm focus. The anterior cingulate tracks errors and helps the mind course correct without panic. The amygdala quiets when safety is felt rather than negotiated. Dopamine no longer hijacks attention with novelty because progress itself begins to feel rewarding. The brain, like a city, responds to leadership. Guard your heart ceases to be an abstract moral and becomes practical physiology. The wellspring can be read as attention, as emotional tone, as the subtle posture of the nervous system. Guarding it looks like recognizing what waters cloud it and what waters clear it. Not a clenched resistance, but a steady watchfulness that keeps the gate from turning into a revolving door. In that guarded space, let your eyes look straight ahead carries a new texture. Straight vision is not a glare. It is a quiet beam that knows where it is headed. Scattered vision feels like 1,000 tiny tugs. Straight vision feels like a single thread pulling the body into coherence. Counsel in this frame becomes a kind of shared prefrontal cortex, distributed intelligence that enlarges perspective. An elder's tested memory reduces costly naivete. A peer's honest mirror cancels the echo chamber. A learner's fresh angle interrupts stale assumptions that have calcified into limits. The brain is social tissue. It updates under the influence of trusted voices. The spiritual and the neural agree here. Humility widens possibility. Plans are less likely to fail when the circle of sight broadens. The soul relaxes when it doesn't have to carry certainty alone. Prepare your work outside. After that, build your house reads like a gentle refusal to rush. It names the temptation to decorate a life not yet ready to bear weight. Preparation grants relief, the way leveled ground grants confidence to the first stone. Inside the brain, this looks like habit circuits, basal ganglia pathways, receiving clear, repeated patterns until effort becomes graceful. Progress ceases to be an argument with oneself and becomes the natural outcome of design. The nervous system loves rhythm. With rhythm, stress hormones ebb, attention stabilizes, and the hours begin to hold. Walls, finally, are not prisons in this imagery. They serve the marketplace. They allow trade, conversation, creativity, and rest to unfold without constant threat. Self-control fits here as protective clarity rather than punitive austerity. In neural terms, inhibitory control is not a scold. It is a safeguard that preserves energy for what matters. In spiritual terms, boundaries keep the good in and the corrosive out, so that the person can remain generous without becoming depleted. Within such walls, kindness thrives longer, focus lasts deeper, and joy loses its skittishness. Wisdom before willpower does not erase effort, it ennobles it. Effort becomes a willing servant instead of a frantic guard dog. The inner city glows, not from ceaseless striving, but from an order that lets light pool in the right places. The impossible still looks tall from a distance, yet up close it begins to divide into doors and corridors. A ruler who asks for understanding first finds those doors. A ruler who honors sequence walks those corridors without fear, and in that walking, strength gathers, not loud, not brittle, but durable, human, and quietly bright. There are days when the mind feels like a council chamber with too many voices speaking at once. One memory argues for caution, one desire pleads for relief, one worry knocks on every door at once. In the midst of this, something quiet tries to rise, a wiser voice that does not shout. It remembers who you are when you are steady. It remembers what matters when noise pretends to be urgent. That quieter voice is not weak, it is simply practiced at waiting. It waits for a ruler to take the seat, for governance to replace commotion, for a kind of leadership that begins not with force, but with clarity. Clarity about what deserves attention and what will pass like weather. Clarity about which thoughts are loyal servants and which are visiting guests. Ancient wisdom names the command center without drama. Above all, guard the inner wellspring, because from it flow the courses of your life. The words are simple and precise. They respect the gravity of the inner life without turning it into a maze. Guarding is not fear, it is care. Guarding is not suspicion, it is discernment. In the language of the body, this is what happens when breathing slows and shoulders soften and the gaze settles. The prefrontal cortex has room to weigh, to choose, to say yes without panic and no without guilt. This is what happens when attention is gathered in one place and told the truth. You are safe enough to think, safe enough to decide, safe enough to lead your own thoughts. Leadership of the inner court is not a single dramatic oath. It is a daily arrangement. The brain learns by repetition and reward, and it rewards whatever you return to. If you return to rumination, rumination grows fluent. If you return to measured judgment, judgment grows fluent. The nervous system is not judging you. It is apprenticing itself to your habits. When leadership is present, the amygdala no longer has to ring every bell. It trusts the watch. When leadership is present, dopamine begins to celebrate progress rather than novelty. When leadership is present, the mind does not chase every glimmer. It tends a steady flame. This is not about becoming rigid. It is about becoming reliable to yourself. There is a particular dignity that arises when thoughts are acknowledged without being enthroned. A thought arrives, it is noted, it is weighed, and if untrue or unhelpful, it is released like a leaf to water. Another thought arrives, carrying a calmer energy, and it is invited to sit and contribute. Over time, this process builds a culture in the city of the self. The loudest thought is no longer the leader. The oldest wound is no longer the judge. The newest distraction is no longer the crown. The throne belongs to the part of you that remembers your purpose and chooses what supports it. The body recognizes this transfer of authority. The jaw eases, the breath lengthens, the chest lifts as if the ribcage knows the gates have closed gently for the night. There will always be visitors to this inner court, echoes of fear, flashes of anger, bursts of longing. They are not enemies. They are messengers. Some carry truth, some carry noise that only sounds like truth because it is loud. Leadership listens, thanks them for the message, and responds from wisdom rather than reflex. Leadership sets a cadence. Leadership keeps a record of what steadies you when you drift. Leadership returns you to the center when feeling tries to drag you to the edges. Return is not failure. Return is proof that governance is working. Pain it addresses, mental noise, ruminations, reactive moods. Expectation breaker. Mastery isn't brute force, it's governance. Clear laws, daily rituals, measured judgments. Solomonic anchor. Above all, guard your heart. Prov 4:23. Heart, inner command center. Practical move. The royal decree. 3 lines each morning. What I will think, what I refuse, what I will return to when distracted. Symbolic metaphor. You as the king, queen, setting laws for the city within. Reflection. What thought pattern most often dethrones you, and what law will replace it? The image of a city helps because it holds both strength and tenderness. Streets fill with life when the gates are tended. Markets flourish when the walls are sound. Music rises at night because watchmen keep their posts. In the same way, creativity does not wither under wise rule. It expands because it is no longer defending itself from constant interruption. In the same way, kindness does not shrink under wise rule. It deepens because energy is no longer squandered on inner conflict. When the throne is occupied by wisdom, the self becomes a place where good things can safely grow. Neuroscience nods in agreement. The networks that sustain focus, regulate emotion, and hold purpose light up under conditions of calm structure and repeated intention. The anterior cingulate guides the mind back when it wanders without scolding. The hippocampus encodes the feeling of coherence so it becomes the familiar state. The prefrontal regions strengthen as decisions align with values. This is the physiology of dignity. This is the body's way of saying that inner government can be learned. It is learned the way every meaningful art is learned, through gentle repetition, through steady attention, through a loyalty to what is truer than the mood of a moment. When the mind asks who governs here, let the answer be felt rather than shouted. Let it be recognized in the way your breath changes before you speak, in the way your eyes rest on what matters, in the way your posture signals that you belong to yourself. Even on difficult days, especially on difficult days, leadership need not be loud. It needs to be present. Presence gathers the scattered. Presence calms the reactive. Presence makes room for judgment to do its quiet, essential work. And in that room, the impossible begins to look like a series of doors that open, one measured decision at a time. There is a moment each day when your attention feels like sunlight through a high window, warm, diffuse, touching everything and igniting nothing. Then, without warning, a single beam finds a lens. The same light that could not warm your hands moments ago now kindles a point of fire. This is the quiet difference between a scattered mind and a governed one. The hours do not change, the light does not change, the lens changes. The body knows it when it happens. The shoulders release an old grip. The breath descends, the eyes soften, and then steady. Thoughts that just wandered begin to take their place like patient workers at a long table. The world still calls from every direction, but the call is filtered, and the filter is mercy. Distraction is not simply noise, it is divided allegiance. One part of you seeks relief, one part seeks achievement, one part seeks connection, and they pull in different directions like horses untrained to the same reins. The nervous system grows tired of this tug of war. The prefrontal cortex tries to arbitrate. Dopamine, hungry for novelty, votes for whatever spark is nearest. It is not failure that follows. It is fray. Fray in the tone of your inner voice. Fray in the through line of the day. Fray in the way your hands move from one task to the next without letting any one task become whole. When attention is honored, the fray gathers into thread. When thread is woven, a day holds. Ancient wisdom speaks directly to the sightline. Let your eyes look straight ahead, not a glare, not a narrowness that refuses the periphery. A steadiness that knows there is a destination, and that wandering eyes wander the feet. The phrase is spare because the practice is elemental. Straight vision changes how choices feel. The easy, immediate thing loses a bit of its shine. The meaningful thing gains weight in the hand, a satisfying gravity that quietly declares, this is the right work for now. In that shift, urgency lowers, and what remains is importance. Importance has a slower pulse. Importance has a truer heat. There is a tenderness in admitting how often attention has been spent like loose coins. A few minutes here, a few there, a dozen small checks, a handful of almost starts, and the day ends with the ache of unfinished intentions. The ache is honest. It is the soul's way of saying that attention is not a toy, it is a treasury. When you treat it as such, the entire inner economy changes. The default mode of the brain, once swirling around old stories, begins to settle as the salience network chooses a single signal to honor. The dorsal attention network, built for sustained focus, hums in agreement. The nervous system, starved for coherence, begins to feed on it. Coherence tastes like relief. There is a peculiar relief that arrives when you decide what matters now and allow what matters later to wait its turn without resentment. The mind grows less brittle. The jaw unhooks. The eyes stop darting for the next small comfort and rest upon the present task as if it were a friend. This is not self-denial dressed in noble words. It is self-respect, felt in the bones. Under such care, the prefrontal cortex grows louder and kinder, helping weigh real consequence over temporary noise. The amygdala becomes less interested in false alarms. Dopamine learns the sweetness of completion rather than the sugar rush of novelty. The same hour opens, and it is suddenly enough. You may notice that attention obeys the stories you tell it. If the story is, "I must hold everything at once," the mind crowds and the hands freeze. If the story is, "I move one true thing forward," the mind arranges and the hands begin. Again and again, this proves itself. Again and again, the beam finds the lens. Again and again, small progress beads into a line that a future self can follow with gratitude. Repetition here is not punishment, it is poetry. The same words returning until the nervous system trusts them. The same choice returning until the soul recognizes it as home. Pain it addresses, distraction, scattered results, unfinished goals, expectation breaker. Multitasking isn't power, it's divided allegiance. Solomonic anchor. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Prov 4:25. Practical move. The scepter schedule. Choose one ruling task for the day. Protect a 90-minute deep focus block. Banish lesser requests to a later court. Symbolic metaphor. A beam of light through a lens igniting fire. Reflection. If attention were currency, what have you been overspending on? There is a reason the image is a beam through a lens. Lenses do not create light, they concentrate it. In the same way, focus does not manufacture talent, time, or new hours on the clock. It brings what already belongs to you into a form that can transform. The world still swirls. Messages still arrive, doors still open and close, memories still announce themselves, moods still change like weather, but the inner court holds its line. The ruler of that court does not panic when a knock sounds. The ruler decides when to open. Time under such leadership stretches in ways that feel almost like grace. The fruits of this care are not flashy, they are quieter and more durable. A finished paragraph that reads, "Clean," a call returned with full presence. A plan that moves from paper into a single visible step. A meal eaten without a screen so the body remembers it has been fed. A night that does not bargain with tomorrow because today was given to something real. These are modest things to an impatient world, yet they build a life that does not collapse under the noise. They build trust within the self. They teach the mind that when it chooses what matters answers back with strength. The beam and the lens, repeated across days, teach a final lesson. Attention is love in motion. When you give it to what is worthy grows. When you give it to what is unworthy, the cost is felt not only in lost minutes, but in a thinning of spirit. Choosing where to place attention becomes a profoundly spiritual act. The placing of your soul's heat upon a thing until it warms. Place it well, and the future gathers. Place it well, and the present deepens. Place it well, and even the impossible begins to soften at the edges, revealing the door that was waiting beneath the glare. There comes a point when thinking alone begins to feel like walking in circles inside a familiar room. The same ideas greet you at the same corners, the same doubts rearrange the chairs. You are intelligent, capable, sincere, and still the air grows thin. The body knows this moment. The shoulders creep toward the ears, the breath stays high, the forehead tightens as if trying to force clarity through pressure. It is not incapacity, it is isolation. Isolation shrinks the field of vision until the only options visible are the ones you have already tried. The heart quietly asks for company that steadies rather than sways, for voices that widen the horizon without stealing the wheel from your hands. Ancient wisdom meets you here with unpretentious clarity. Plans stumble when counsel is absent. Plans mature when counsel is present. The proverb carries more than advice. It carries relief. Relief from carrying certainty alone. Relief from the echo that turns every decision into an argument with yourself. Relief, not because others will live your life for you, but because shared sight changes what you can see. When the circle of vision expands, options multiply, and fear loses its talent for sounding like the only truth in the room. This is not spectacle. It is steady architecture, the kind that keeps a house standing when the wind changes. The nervous system responds to counsel in ways both subtle and measurable. A trusted face, a compassionate tone, a question asked without judgment. These cues signal safety. Safety softens the amygdala's alarms and invites the prefrontal cortex to step forward with its gifts of weighing, sequencing, and meaning. Mirrors offered by peers update old stories that once felt permanent. The brain's social circuits, designed to learn through others, begin to do their quiet work, comparing perspectives, testing assumptions, integrating memories with fresh angles. Under such conditions, conscience grows clearer. Conscience is not a scold, it is a compass. It speaks most audibly when the room within is calm and the room around you is kind. There is a special humility in gathering an elder, a peer, and a learner. Wisdom, honesty, and curiosity seated at the same table. An elder lends depth of memory, saving you from paying full price for lessons already purchased by time. A peer offers a mirror that does not flatter and does not mock. A mirror that respects your strength while naming your blind spot. A learner supplies freshness, the grace of not knowing, the question that loosens a knot you did not realize had tightened. Together they protect you from two forms of error, the recklessness that comes from overconfidence and the paralysis that comes from overthinking. The soul relaxes when it does not have to carry every angle alone. Conscience belongs in this circle, as the quiet judge who never raises a hand but whose raised eyebrow changes the room. It listens while others speak and then asks a plain question. Does this align with the person you are becoming? Alignment does not always feel easy, but it feels clean. The body can tell the difference. In alignment, the stomach settles, the breath lengthens, the spine finds its height without strain. Decisions made in alignment may still be difficult, yet they do not shred the inner fabric. They leave dignity intact. Dignity is not pride, it is the felt sense that you have been honest with yourself in the presence of others. The image of a round table matters. A round table has no corners where shame can hide, and no far end where power hoards itself. A round table declares that perspective is shared even when responsibility is singular. You remain the one who chooses. You remain the one who lives with the choice. Counsel does not erase freedom, it refines it. Counsel does not dilute calling, it clarifies it. Counsel, offered in love and received in humility, turns a tangle of options into a path that can be walked with steadier feet. Neuroscience and spirituality, often treated as separate languages, speak in unison here. The brain's networks for empathy and perspective-taking brighten in the presence of trusted others. Moral intuition strengthens when you are calm enough to hear it. Working memory holds the strands long enough to weave them into coherence. The soul hears the same truth in a different accent. In the company of the wise, confusion thins, motives are sifted, and the next right step begins to glow with a quiet light, not a spotlight. A lamp close to the ground, enough to move without stumbling. In seasons of strain, isolation makes the impossible look taller. In seasons of counsel, the same mountain reveals switchbacks you could not see from the valley. The problem may remain large, but your posture toward it changes. Less braced, more grounded, less frantic, more faithful, less alone, more accompanied. Accompanied does not mean carried. It means surrounded by clarity deep enough that even a hard path feels navigable. Again and again, this pattern proves kind. Again and again, this pattern proves strong. Again and again, conscience and counsel keep each other honest. Pain it addresses, overthinking alone, echo chambers, impulsive decisions. Expectation breaker, strength seeks counsel, weakness hides in certainty. Solomonic anchor, plans fail for lack of counsel, with many advisors they succeed. Prov 15:22. Practical move, build a council of 3, 1 elder, experience, 1 peer, truth teller, 1 learner, fresh eyes. Run big choices through them, plus your conscience check. Symbolic metaphor, a round table where perspectives sharpen strategy. Reflection, which voice have you been missing? Elder, peer, or learner? Imagine the room where such conversations happen. Not grand, not ornate. A table with marks from years of meals and maps. Mugs that remember the warmth of other winters. A chair that creaks in the same place every time someone leans forward to say what they really mean. In this room, you speak plainly. Others speak plainly. The air clears. The weight does not vanish, yet it redistributes, and your shoulders feel it. Conscience listens, nods, and points without pushing. In that small, honest room, the mind stops spinning and begins to walk. Steps gather, paths appear, and the life within you, once crowded by the noise of a single perspective, widens into something livable, something sturdy, something quietly bright. There is a sweetness that arrives too soon and leaves a film of emptiness behind it. The way a bright dessert briefly thrills the tongue and then asks the body for something it can actually live on. Many lives carry this quiet aftertaste. A new idea sparks and the mind rushes to celebrate. A plan is named out loud and the applause in the head feels like completion. A single hard day earns a binge of relief that quietly unthreads the progress it was meant to honor. The pattern is human. The body craves ease when effort rises. The brain releases dopamine at the hint of novelty. The heart aches for recognition when the work is still unseen. None of this makes you weak. It makes you wired for immediacy in a world that rarely rewards patience in the first 10 minutes. Yet beneath the craving, something truer keeps speaking. Let pleasure be governed by purpose, and the pleasure will deepen rather than dissolve. Ancient wisdom keeps its counsel spare. Prepare the work outside, and only after that build the house. The picture is agricultural and architectural at once. Soil readied before seed, land surveyed before stone, foundation settled before ornament. It is not an argument against beauty. It is a design for beauty that lasts. When the order is honored, the house holds. When the order is skipped, the first storm writes its verdict across the walls. The same law moves through a day, a relationship, a vocation. Where preparation has been given its rightful season, the visible result carries weight and warmth. Where preparation has been abandoned for the thrill of announcement, the result looks complete but sounds hollow, like a drum with loosened skin. The brain tells this story in its own language. Reward prediction signals rise when an outcome seems near. Even if the outcome is only imagined, the surge feels satisfying enough to pause the work that would actually earn it. Temporal discounting tilts value toward the immediate, even when the long-term benefit is unquestioned. Habit circuits, once trained to expect quick hits after small effort, begin to nudge for shortcuts, as if shortcuts were the point. Yet the same brain is capable of a quieter, richer chemistry. When meaningful progress is repeated and made visible, dopamine stops hovering around novelty and starts bonding to the rhythm of completion. The prefrontal cortex, entrusted with the long view, strengthens its influence. The basal ganglia learn the music of sustained effort. The nervous system, no longer whipsawed by promises of instant relief, settles into a steadier pulse. There is a gentler way to speak about restraint, as hospitality for future joy. Imagine a table being set in a room that is still being built. Snacks will keep guests busy for a moment, but the deeper warmth belongs to a meal served in a room that does not leak when the rain comes. Purpose does not silence pleasure. It seasons it. Purpose says not yet, so it can say yes in a way that fills the chest instead of just the mouth. This distinction is felt in the body. The quick hit delivers a spike followed by a sag. Governed pleasure lands low in the belly, steady and slow, the kind that stays. The difference is not moral theater. It is nervous system fact. Quitting when it grows hard often arrives disguised as self-kindness. This is enough for today, says a voice that wants to keep you safe from the sting of sustained focus. Safety is good, false safety is not. False safety protects you from the discomfort that forms strength, the way an overprotective brace keeps a muscle from learning its own confidence. When effort is aligned with meaning, the body learns to pass the difference between productive strain and punitive grind. Productive strain leaves dignity intact. Punitive grind strips it. The former quietly enlarges your life. The latter shrinks it while boasting of toughness. Wisdom can tell them apart by the residue they leave in your chest at sunset. There is humility in allowing foundations to be plain while they are being laid. It is not glamorous. Soil on the hands, stone on the shoulder, silence instead of applause. But the soul learns to prefer this silence because it is full of promise rather than performance. In time, the very act of laying one more stone becomes a source of meaning. The repetition ceases to be numbing and becomes ritual. Ritual is repetition with memory. It tells the body, we have been here before and last time we came away stronger. The hippocampus files this as a trustworthy story. The next season of effort inherits its calm from the last. Pain it addresses, impulsivity, dopamine chasing, quitting when it's hard, expectation breaker. Pleasure grows when purpose governs it. Solomonic anchor, prepare your work outside. After that, build your house. Prov 24:27. Practical move. The stone by stone rule. Define one weekly compounding action toward a single long-term outcome. No reward until the stone is laid. Symbolic metaphor, laying foundational stones before decorating the palace. Reflection. What reward are you willing to delay for 90 days to strengthen your future? The palace imagery is tender, not grandiose. Stones are heavy. Progress is measured in inches. Weather interrupts. Hands tire. Still, the outline becomes visible. Still, the floor holds. Still, the walls rise in a way that makes music sound better when it finally plays within them. This is the paradox that patient builders come to love. The slow path, which once felt like deprivation, becomes the only path that does not betray you. A celebration delayed by purpose is not a celebration denied. It is a celebration protected. Even joy respects walls that keep the wind from snuffing the candle. In this light, success looks less like a sudden coronation and more like 1,000 quiet days that no one else saw. The inner city learns to prefer this rhythm because it can be trusted on Mondays and in winter, when moods are thinner and sun is scarce. The body senses that it is being led rather than whipped, that its energy is being spent where it returns as strength, that its pleasures are deepening instead of narrowing. And as the stones accumulate, sometimes light, sometimes heavy, the mind that once begged for quick trophies begins to savor a different reward. The felt knowledge that the house will stand when the weather changes. There are seasons when life begins to feel porous, as if the hours have more doors than walls, and every door is propped open. Alerts slide into the mind like uninvited guests. Invitations arrive wrapped in urgency and dressed as kindness. The body tries to keep pace, but speaks its protest in the oldest language it knows. A stomach that tightens, a breath that never quite descends, a neck that carries more than it was built to bear. Exhaustion becomes familiar, though not quite nameable. It is not drama, it is dilution. Too much enters, too little is kept. Somewhere beneath the pace and the noise, a quiet truth rises. Freedom without form, phrase, and even generosity needs shelter if it is to remain generous. Ancient wisdom listens to that truth and answers with an image as old as cities. Walls, not as prisons, not as punishment, but as guardians that allow the market to flourish and music to rise at night. Like a city with broken walls is a person without self-control. The sentence lands with clarity because the body recognizes it before the mind explains it. Boundaries allow energy to pool where it can nourish rather than evaporate where it cannot. They protect the feast from the wind. They protect the watch from constant alarms. They protect kindness from becoming a kind of self-abandonment that smiles while it empties the well. Neuroscience offers its own architecture for the same idea. Inhibitory control, the quiet art of deciding what will not enter, depends on networks that grow stronger with use. Prefrontal regions to weigh and restrain, anterior insula to read the body's signals, basal ganglia to encode patterns until no becomes as graceful as yes. Udi When the gates stand open, the amygdala lives in siren mode and cortisol writes its worry across muscle and mood. When the gates close at the right times, the alarms retire and the nervous system learns to rest without having to collapse. Rest is not idleness here. It is a strategic pause that keeps the inner city supplied. There is a tenderness in acknowledging how often the word no has been confused with unkindness. Many hearts learn to stay available to everything, so no one would ever feel abandoned. Yet the self that is always available eventually offers less of what it most wanted to give: presence, warmth, attention that lands. Boundaries do not shrink love, they shape it. They do not reduce generosity, they refine it so it reaches the places that can truly receive it. In the body, this refinement feels like a longer exhale, a shoulder that no longer lives half-raised, a pulse that slows when the door is closed and quickens again in healthy ways when it opens by choice. The wall is not a monolith, it includes gates. Gates open and close according to season, purpose and wisdom. A gate that never opens becomes a cage. A gate that never closes becomes an apology. Wisdom learns to feel the difference by its residue. After a porous day, the chest feels thinned and the voice goes brittle. After a day of clear edges, the chest feels settled and the voice returns to its warmth. This is not moral theater. It is nervous system mathematics. Energy either concentrates or diffuses. Attention either nourishes or drains. Boundaries decide. Boundaries don't shrink freedom, they protect it. The sentence sounds like a paradox until it is lived. A life bounded by wise limits has more room, not less. Room for the one task that matters. Room for the people who truly belong. Room for quiet that refuels courage. Courage, in this frame, is not loud. It shows itself in the steadiness to choose a few honest commitments and keep them, in the humility to let the rest wait outside without resentment, in the fidelity to one's calling when novelty sings its bright passing songs. The mind grows braver when it is no longer required to be everywhere at once. There is also a spiritual gentleness to the wall. It is not built against the world, it is built for the life entrusted to you. It says yes to depth over scatter, to integrity over image, to rest that restores rather than entertainment that numbs. It honors the sacredness of attention as the currency of love. It honors the truth that the soul cannot be hurried into wholeness by one more obligation. When such honor becomes the norm, the impossible shrinks into shapes that hands can hold, projects that can be finished, relationships that can be nourished, a self that can be trusted. Pain it addresses, saying yes to everything. Toxic inputs, burnout. Expectation breaker. Boundaries don't shrink freedom, they protect it. Solomonic anchor. Like a city with broken walls is a person without self-control. Prov 25:28. Practical move. 2 locks and a lantern. 2 hard limits, time plus media. 1 guiding value posted where you'll see it nightly. Review breaches without self-shame, only course correct. Symbolic metaphor. Closing the gates at night so the market thrives by day. Reflection. Which single boundary, if honored for 30 days, would most change your life? Imagine night falling over the inner city. Stalls are covered, coins counted, laughter softens as families turn toward home. At the wall, the gatekeepers complete their watch and close the doors with a sound that reassures more than it restricts. Inside, musicians tune their instruments. Lights glow in windows. Quiet returns, not as emptiness, but as fullness gathered. In the same way, a person with restored boundaries discovers that peace is not the absence of demands. It is the presence of edges that hold. From that held center, morning arrives as invitation rather than invasion, and courage steps into the day, already breathing like someone who belongs to their own life. At the edge of a plain where winds changed without warning, there stood a city that had forgotten the hour of nightfall. Its gates hung open on rusted hinges. Its watchtowers held more birds than watchmen. Through the alleys, rumors moved faster than merchants. And at the center square, a proclamation board leaned empty, as if the city had nothing to say about itself. By day, the market bustled, but the bustle felt thin, like music played over a frayed string. By night, torches flickered without pattern, and sleep arrived late, then left early, leaving a grit of weariness on every morning. One evening, a stranger entered without fanfare, the way clarity sometimes enters a life, quietly, as if it had been there all along. The stranger walked the walls and the streets with the patience of someone listening for what stone remembers. At the empty proclamation board, a single sheet appeared at dawn. Not a trumpet blast of rules, only a steadying note. It named what the city would honor, what it would no longer sell its hours to, and where its attention would return each time it drifted. Citizens paused at the words and felt their pulse find a slower measure, the way a scattered flock gathers when it sees the shepherd's staff. No alarms, only recognition. The city had spoken to itself and discovered it had a voice. In the days that followed, a small council gathered at a round table near the well, an elder whose hands could still feel the weight of past harvests, a peer with eyes like clear mirrors, and a learner who asked questions that cut new doors in old walls. They were ordinary people, yet the room changed when they met. Plans lost their wobble, ideas found edges. The elder remembered hidden valleys that spared journeys from unnecessary storms. The peer named shortcuts that looked like roads but ended at cliffs. The learner tilted maps until a fresh path appeared where no one had thought to look. The city did not grow louder, it grew wiser. Work turned from spectacle to sequence. In the courtyard of builders, foundations were marked on the earth before any trumpet was sounded. Stones arrived at a measured pace, each one placed with the contentment of those who know what wait is for. Festivities waited without sulking, as if they too understood that music sounds fuller in a room that will not leak. There were moments when impatience pressed its face to the window, reminding everyone how bright applause can feel when it arrives early. Yet patience held the door, and a different sweetness settled in the chest. A warmth that stayed after candles were snuffed. Attention found its lens. Instead of trying to light every corner at once, the city chose a single work for the morning bell. One bridge to mend, one orchard to tend, one ledger to finish in clean lines. Lesser requests did not vanish. They waited in the outer court until the hour turned, and the work of the morning had closed its circle. The same sunlight fell, but now it gathered and kindled. Merchants noticed that their voices no longer frayed by noon. Children noticed that stories told at twilight had endings. Craftsmen noticed that hands remembered more than they had been given credit for. And the tools answered to that memory with steadier sound. With the return of rhythm came the return of walls. Not the high, punishing kind that make neighbors into strangers, but walls with gates that remembered seasons. At dusk, the gates closed with a sound that reassured more than it restricted, and lanterns were lifted along the parapets to keep the night kind. 2 locks were chosen for the most contested hours, one for the time that leaks most easily, and one for the noise that disguises itself as news. Inside the walls, music rose and bread cooled on windowsills. Laughter had weight again, and silence had warmth. By morning, the city woke rested, as if rest had been an ally rather than a prize to be wrestled from the dark. Through all of this, the proclamation board changed with the day but kept its posture. Each dawn brought 3 lines: what the city would think toward, what it would refuse to sell its peace for, what focus it would return to when the winds tried their usual tricks. The repetition became a kind of lullaby for the nervous system of the streets. Shopkeepers read it with mended attention. Teachers read it and found their tone less brittle. The watch read it and felt less alone at the edge of the night. Over time, even the winds adjusted, spending less energy on a city that no longer offered itself as an open corridor for every weather. Strangers began to remark that the city seemed taller, though no new towers had been raised yet. It was posture they were seeing. The way markets arranged themselves with the dignity of work that mattered, the way children ran with a joy that was not frantic, the way elders moved with the steadiness of those who know their counsel belongs. Difficult days still arrived, storms that tested the mortar, rumors that tried to outrun truth, nights when the wind hammered the gates as if to prove a point. Yet foundations held, counsel met, proclamations steadied the morning, Attention returned. Celebration waited until it could be trusted to deepen rather than dissolve. In time, music filled the hall that had once echoed. The city feasted, not because hunger had been denied, but because hunger had been honored and fed by work that could carry weight. Lanterns burned low and kind, walls held their line without hardness, and the plain around the city seemed less threatening, as if the horizon had drawn a little nearer. No one could say exactly when the impossible had changed its shape. They only knew that what once looked like a wall from the distance had become a set of doors when approached with wisdom, with counsel, with patience, with focus, with edges that kept goodness in and waste outside. On some mornings, the stranger still walked the walls, not as a savior or a judge, but as a witness. The city no longer required a rescue, it required a remembering. And as long as dawn found 3 lines on the proclamation board, as long as the round table welcomed voices without fear, as long as stones met foundation before flags met wind, as long as gates learned when to open and when to close, remembering stayed near. The city did not become perfect. It became governable. It became home. And in that home, what once felt unreachable began to nod, as if conceding that it, too, understood the language of a life kept in wise order. Ritual turns wisdom into something the hands can feel, not pressure, not a dare, a rhythm that steadies the breath and gives the day a recognizable spine. The city within moves better when bells chime at known hours, when the market knows which stalls open first, when the watch knows who holds the lantern at night. In the same way, a life begins to hold when intention takes on a form that can be lived on ordinary mornings, in ordinary weather, with an ordinary heart that sometimes wakes bright and sometimes wakes heavy. This is where the daily practice stack stands, not as a set of tricks, but as a shape that keeps dignity close. Morning opens with the royal decree. 3 lines appear on a page, like a small flag raised over the inner square. What thought will lead? What thought will not be sold your attention today? What thought you will return to when the wind turns and tries its usual work? The body often knows the shift before the mind narrates it. Shoulders lower a fraction. The breath deepens by a quiet measure, and the room inside grows just wide enough for judgment to sit down. The brain reads this as safety, and safety makes wisdom audible. A mind that begins with a calm proclamation spends less of its strength renaming chaos all afternoon. As the day gathers speed, the scepter schedule takes its place without spectacle. One task is honored as the ruling task. No trumpets, just a clear seat at the table, and a single 90-minute court is kept for that work. Lesser requests do not vanish. They wait outside the door like visitors whose time will come. The same hour stretches when it is given a single allegiance. The dorsal attention network hums. Micro-urges lose their talent for stealing focus, and the nervous system signals relief with a longer exhale. At the end of such a block, the head feels washed rather than wrung, and the work holds a shape that hands can recognize again tomorrow. Across the week, counsel adds its warmth in the counsel of 3. An elder's memory, a peer's mirror, a learner's fresh eyes. 3 chairs that keep certainty from hardening and fear from narrowing the path to a thread. Big choices pass through this circle the way river water passes through a filter, not to be stalled, but to run clearer. Conscience listens alongside them, not scolding, only aligning. When alignment arrives, it is felt before it is announced. The stomach unclenches, the spine stands without strain, and the decision carries its own energy rather than asking to be dragged. Progress settles into the bones through the stone-by-stone rule. Each week is given a single compounding action that moves one long horizon forward, and celebration waits quietly, kindly, until that stone is laid. The brain learns to pair reward with real weight rather than with the bright illusion of almost. Dopamine, trained by repetition, bonds to completion. The day no longer bargains with itself for sugary trophies that dissolve in the mouth. It prefers the slow sweetness that sits low in the belly and stays. Over time, the ritual matures into memory, and memory lowers the cost of beginning again. Evening returns with 2 locks and a lantern. Two hard limits, time and media, close the gate with a sound that reassures more than it restricts. A single guiding value is lifted where eyes can meet it before sleep, and the day is reviewed without self-accusation, only course correction, the way a captain adjusts a heading by degrees rather than by drama. Cortisol settles when doors are closed on purpose. The amygdala retires from false alarms. The parasympathetic system tucks the city in so that rest becomes restoration instead of collapse. Night keeps watch. The market will thrive by day. Lived together, these 5 gestures begin to feel less like effort and more like atmosphere. Morning carries the tone of the royal decree. Midday holds the gravity of the scepter schedule. The week breathes with the voices of the Council of 3. Progress steps to the quiet drum of the stone-by-stone rule. And night gathers itself inside 2 locks and a lantern. The repetition is intentional. Repetition teaches the nervous system which rooms are safe, which paths are trustworthy, which sounds mean all is well. The soul, long strained by improvising its safety, relaxes into rhythms that do not ask it to be brilliant in order to be whole. Some days will wobble, weather shifts, news knocks, a memory sends its echo down the corridor at an odd hour. On such days, return becomes the most tender kind of strength. Return to the 3 lines without apology. Return to the single task without dramatizing the drift. Return to counsel without the pride that hates to ask. Return to the next stone, even if the last one felt heavier than it should have. Return to the locks and the lantern when the dark wants company that burns rather than heals. Return is not a retreat. It is governance recovering itself. In time, the stack shapes posture. The jaw forgets its old grip. The eyes focus without hardening. The voice warms even when it must be firm. Work begins to feel like stewardship instead of a test you must pass to be worthy of rest. The people who live with you notice it first. Presence that lands, attention that does not flinch, decisions that do not wobble when watched. The inner city notice follows soon after. Fewer alarms, cleaner streets, a market that closes on time and opens with purpose. The impossible, once a monolith at the edge of vision, reveals seams where hands can take hold. No single gesture here is dramatic. Together they create a climate where strength grows the way gardens grow, patiently, with weather, with seasons, with roots that hold. Wisdom stands at the center, so willpower does not have to perform alone. Counsel keeps company with conscience, so choices feel clean. Focus gives heat without burning through the fuel. Foundations mature before flags meet wind. Walls remember their gates, and gates remember their hours. And a life once diffused begins to glow from its center out, calm enough to see clearly, brave enough to carry weight, steady enough to keep walking when the horizon asks for more. Wisdom stands at the center so effort does not have to shout. That is the thread running through every image, every practice, every quiet turn of the inner city. When understanding governs first, the mind stops fighting itself and begins to build. The body reads the calm as safety. The soul recognizes the tone as home. What once felt like a wall begins to divide into doors. The inner throne, who actually governs your mind, names the seat where leadership begins, trading commotion for clarity, so thoughts can serve rather than seize the crown. The law of attention, where focus goes, your kingdom grows, gathers scattered light through a single lens, until one worthy task holds the morning and finishes clean. Counsel and conscience, seat wise advisors at your table, enlarges vision with voices that steady, while the inner compass aligns choices with the person you are becoming. Delayed gratification, build before you boast, protects foundations from the seduction of early applause, so progress can carry real weight. Self-control as city walls, boundaries that make you brave, restores edges that keep goodness in, noise out, and courage supplied for the day. Across these teachings, the body's language and the soul's language meet. Longer exhales, softer jaws, steadier eyes, clearer plans, kinder self-talk, Effort that feels like stewardship rather than strain. The repetition is intentional. Repetition turns wisdom into atmosphere. Morning decrees that calm the square within. A single ruling task that honors the hour. Counsel that cleans the water. Stones set in their season. Gates that remember when to close and when to open. A quiet question waits here, close to the ground like a lamp. Which single gesture of this way, throne, lens, table, stone, or wall, speaks your name today? And what would it feel like in your body tonight if it had been honored? If something in these words met you where you truly live, you are welcome to linger in this space. The rhythm here is simple and human. Wisdom first, effort guided, counsel welcomed, foundations honored, edges restored. We return each week, not with noise but with nourishment. The way a lantern returns to its post at dusk, so travelers can see the path without rushing. You will not be hurried here. You will be met with steadiness, with calm, with the quiet confidence that ordinary days can hold extraordinary clarity. Should you wish to keep walking, consider this a standing place at the round table. Your chair kept warm, your voice expected, your inner city respected. If someone you care for is quietly building their own walls and gates, they may find comfort in this kind of company. Ahead lies a deeper conversation about ordered stewardship, how resources, time, and talent can be arranged with the same calm wisdom that steadies the mind, so that generosity grows roots and prosperity gains a soul. Until then, let the night be kind, the breath be easy, and the gates of your inner city close with that reassuring sound that says you are safe enough to rest.